So welcome everyone to the College of Law, and today's webinar is on the topic of crafting your career and building a career that works for you. My name's Susan Pincus and I'm the National Careers Professional with the College of Law, and I'm very excited to be joined by two of our three panellists, Marie Cade as well as Nicole Davidson. And our third presenter, hopefully he's going to pop onto the screen any minute, is Damon Laffer. So just before we start, I'd like to do the acknowledgement of the country, and then I'll introduce you to the panelists, and then we'll kick off the session. And just to also mention that if you have any questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A. Rather than the chat. Q&A actually works a little bit easier if we've just got them all in the one spot, and we will have lots of time to answer your questions, and we should finish in 1 hour. So as we gather for today's webinar, we recognise that many of us are on different lands of different traditional custodians. I would like to acknowledge all of the traditional custodians of the lands we are all present on today, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are participating in this Skills Week. I pay my respects to each of their elders past, present and emerging. All right, so just to start off with, I'd like to introduce Marie Cade. So Marie is a lawyer, a nationally accredited mediator, certified conflict coach, communication specialist, as well as an adjunct lecturer at the College of Law. She runs a boutique mediation and coaching practice. She's also a counsellor at the City of Glen Eira in Melbourne, serving her second term. She was awarded the LexisNexis Janders Dean Legal Innovation Award in 2016, recognised as a thought leader at the Women in Law Awards in 2017, was a finalist for the Women in Law Excellence Award in 2017, and was awarded a Churchill Fellowship in 2020 to research parenting coordination, a post-divorce dispute resolution process. She has created a revolutionary new way for her clients to heal and get over divorce or breakup, so as to empower them to improve their communication, manage conflict, and reach a peaceful, amicable separation so they can successfully co-parent together. Welcome, Marie.
Thanks, Susan.
Nicole Davidson is a conflict resolution and negotiation expert, and also an adjunct lecturer at the College of Law. Welcome, Damon. He's just connecting up.
Sorry, I completely forgot daylight savings kicked in.
Oh, that's okay. We thought that might be the case. That's all right. You're here now and you're in perfect time. Cool. We're just doing a bit of an introduction, Damon.
Sounds good.
Yep. So Nicole has been working with clients to improve their business outcomes for almost 10 years. She not only teaches the skills, but puts them into practice in her consulting practice and as a commercial mediator. The conflict resolution work has covered a wide range of industries in both the for-profit and for-purpose sectors. Nicole is a mediator on the Victorian Small Business Commission mediation panel, and in 2021 she was awarded the Resolution Institute's Award for Achievement by an Emerging Practitioner. Prior to building her expertise in negotiation and conflict resolution, Nicole gained experience as a lawyer, insolvency practitioner, investment banker, and recruitment consultant in Melbourne, London, and Dubai. So welcome, Nicole.
Thanks, Susan. It's lovely to be here.
And our other speaker is Damon Laffer. And Damon is originally from Boyne Island. That's how I pronounce it.
Yes, that's correct.
A small town south of Rockhampton. Damon studied online through Central Queensland University for his Bachelor of Laws degree, then going on to complete his PLT through the college. He loves study so much that he's currently enrolled to complete his master's with a double major in commercial and business transactions, as well as commercial litigation. Prior to being admitted in August 2020, he worked for a small generalist firm in Gladstone, focusing on mainly criminal, domestic violence and conveyancing. Upon being admitted, he joined Miller Sockhill Lawyers in Maroochydore, packed up everything and moved from Boyne Island to the Sunshine Coast in a week. He focuses on mainly business and commercial transactions, as well as commercial litigation and minor disputes. Around May 2020, Damon commenced the Young Lawyer podcast as he was feeling a bit lost and wanted a unique opportunity to connect with the leaders within this profession, as well as trying to assist those who were or will be in a similar predicament to provide them with guidance moving forward. So for you, Damon, you're going to be on the other side today.
Thank you for having me.
That would be a good experience. So just to perhaps start off, maybe with you, Anne-Marie, do you want to each just give a typical week in your life, just so that our audience get a bit of a feel for the type of work that you're doing?
Thanks, Susan. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and it's really great to be here. So my typical week, actually, I was just saying to Susan and Nicole, it changes from minute to minute, so it's not really typical. But anyway, so I run a boutique mediation and coaching practice. So I would generally be doing maybe 1 or 2 mediations a week. Also, a lot of coaching involved work, where whether it's involved with helping clients prepare for mediation, or actually working with clients to help them manage conflicts. So that could be clients as individuals, or I also work with businesses to help their teams. So that's the mediation practice. I also work as an adjunct lecturer at the College of Law. So I'm one of the lecturers for the practical legal training, and I have students in who do a variety of subjects, and I help them with that. A typical week also involves me doing some orals with them. And if you're from the College of Law, you know what that entails. So it's all very exciting. I also work as, I'm a counselor at the City of Glen Ira. So we have council meetings every evening, or not every evening, thankfully, or every Tuesday evening. And that goes from like 6 in the evening till probably 9 at night. And, you know, I end up having committee meetings usually. So, and I do a bit of study as well. So typically, it all shifts and changes, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's a lot. You pack a lot into your week.
Yeah. And I'm not sure whether you said week or day, but that was it. Anyway.
How about you, Nicole?
So I'm a bit the same as Anne-Marie in that there's no real typical, but actually I'm looking back over what I've been doing this week and what's on, and it's a really good snapshot of the sorts of things I do. So I started the week with some calls with clients to talk about some potential work and do some proposals. So for example, one was with a local government doing a proposal to do some mediation work where councillors are having some disputes with each other. I've also put a proposal in this week with a large commercial landlord to assist them in getting some of their rent relief negotiations done at a more speedy process as is possible through the Small Business Commission at the moment. I've run a half-day workshop on, what was this week's? This week's was around how to get better results from your delegation and supervision for a group of accountants. I've had some pre-mediation calls for a commercial mediation that's going to be running for a half-day tomorrow. And this morning so far, I've spent putting together episodes for my podcast, which is being released in November on negotiation in real life. So that's just some of it. I'm sure there's other things that I've been doing over the week as well, but it's a real variety of different things that come up, which stops me from being bored.
Yeah, that's for sure. And thank you so much for making time to be part of the panel. Damon, tell us a little bit about your typical week.
It's actually been a busy week for me this week. Started off with mediation on Tuesday and then preparing for another mediation on Monday. and then a hearing tomorrow. Other than that, really, it's just, day-to-day, contractual reviews, dealing with demands, going back and forth in that litigation process. And then outside, just, trying to keep up with my studies as best I can. And then when I can, try and find guests to jump on the Young Lawyer podcast and have a chat, and then try and get them out weekly. Although sometimes it might fall to, fortnightly or even every 3 weeks or so. But it's not as hectic as the other two, which is fortunate for me at this stage.
Yeah, it just enjoy that while it lasts. Probably won't stay like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just going to ask some questions of you all. And if you all just want to, just take a turn in responding. So given that the topic today is about crafting your career, I'd just be curious to know, how did you find your field of interest? And how have your interests changed over time? So each of you have started somewhere different to where you are now. So I'm just kind of really, really curious to know a little bit about what was going on and how that has evolved. So perhaps Anne-Marie, if you want to kick off.
Okay, so I actually moved to Australia about 18 years ago, and I was already a practicing lawyer in Sri Lanka, but I had to come here and re-qualify. So when I got here, I was like 7 months pregnant, had a baby, and did my practical legal training actually online, and worked for a law firm. At the time, I was actually admitted. We only had to do 6 months with another law firm, thankfully, not 2 years. So I did the 6 months, and then decided that I'll start my own practice virtually at my kitchen table, and ran property law practice. And so there was property conveyancing, wills and estates, a bit of commercial law, a bit of family law, and ran that from 2006, I think, till about 2015. And then I realized, like, a lot of my clients I was assisting with in family law weren't really happy with the results they were getting. And then I figured, no, there has to be a better way. And so I decided to retrain as a mediator. And that kind of opened a whole new world of opportunity. Because I absolutely loved the whole concept, and then decided that I also wanted to do more training in conflict resolution. So I did that, and then decided I'll sell my legal practice in 2018 and just concentrate on the mediation and the conflict resolution. So that has become a real passion for me, and I really enjoy that work. Then decided, the opportunity posed itself, and I was able to get the opportunity to work at the college, which was really interesting. So that sort of blended in well with the work I was doing and gave me a little bit, more diversity, as it were. And then one of my clients who I used to work with when I ran my property law practice, he used to be the mayor in Glen Ira. And he said to me, why don't you run for council? And that was how I ran for council. So it's all about, I think, just putting yourself out there. And I ran for council and did not get in 2016. But then I got a call from the Elections Commission in 2018 in December, and they said to me, there's been, someone's resigned and there's going to be another recount, and are you in? And I said, yeah, knowing that I'm never going to get it. And then I get a call, you've been elected. And I'm like, what do I do now? I have no idea about what I'm doing. And then, I was kind of thrown in the deep end, but really loved it. So it's, it just sort of the opportunity arose, and I took it. And so that's a bit about how I've got to doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you basically put your hand up for every opportunity that has come your way, and just continuously, being curious and also upskilled. It sounds like you've done a lot of that. Yeah. What about you, Damon? I just remember you started off, I think, in criminal law, and then now you've moved across to more commercially focused work. So tell us what was going on for you.
I guess being 18 at the time, 18 to about 20, 21, still relatively young, but dealing with the day-to-day, I guess, clientele kind of has a pretty big effect on you. especially in a small town, which is notorious for drugs, as bad as that sounds. Being part of that, and then just the constant threats, believe it or not, my boss was getting death threats every second week. Clients just, you could do a good job and the clients would still end up in prison, still, be mad at you. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I sought to get away from that as quick as possible. And then come down here, started doing business transactions and litigation. So when there's, debt collecting or dealing with insolvency, liquidation and all that sort of matters. So it's good to be that first point of contact, and the clients actually want to see you. They don't have to see you because they're in trouble, but they, in trouble in that sense, but they need to see you because they want to. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you didn't kind of set out specifically with an interest in criminal law when you started out? Was it just more around that was an option for you at the time?
Yeah, so I kind of just fell into a job, really. I never really intended to be a lawyer at all, to be honest. When I first went to uni when I was 18, I actually wanted to be a physio, but it didn't work out. And so I came back from the Gold Coast and pretty much went straight into this job. And during this job, I was like, oh, well, I could probably do this. And it kind of went from there.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. And Nicole, your journey's been really interesting. So perhaps if you wanted to share where you started off.
It's certainly a very windy road, my career path. And look, a bit like Damon, I never intended to be a lawyer. I actually decided at about year 10, I loved accounting, sad but true. And so I aimed to get into commerce at Melbourne Uni, which I was lucky enough that I did. But not only did I have the marks to get into commerce, I had the marks to get into law. So I thought, you know what? It's only an extra 2 years for a double degree, may as well give it a go. I think my enthusiasm for the law played out when I applied for summer clerkships, and I sent out applications to 13 of the larger law firms and 6 of the top tier accounting firms at the time. I got offers from 6 accounting firms and not a single interview at a law firm, which sort of says something about the amount of interest I had. That being said, once I started working in an insolvency practice at one of the top tier accounting firms, and this is one of the strange career choices I made in my life at the time, to become an accountant, and still you have to do professional year, which is about 18 months of fairly tough exams, which didn't sound like much fun compared to doing articles, which was go and work for a year and become a lawyer. So I went off and I did my articles at Minter Ellison. It sort of confirmed what I already thought, that there was aspects of legal practice that just didn't resonate with me. The very technical nature of things and the fact that sometimes it was substance over form, I found quite frustrating. So I went back out of that. I did investment banking for a while because I thought that was a more positive environment to work in than insolvency, which is, pretty stressful, and people are always a bit upset when you're in an insolvency situation. So a bit like Damon, you're in that environment where it's not always a positive place to be, and you're working with people. I found it was really hard to trust people. They were always telling you lies to get outcomes that they wanted, and it was a bit stressful. Anyway, I went to investment banking. I moved to London. I got a bit stuck there and ended up going to a recruitment company over in London and saying, look, I just need something different. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. What have you got for me? And the next thing you knew, I ended up working as a recruiter. And I think it was there I realized the thing that appealed to me about recruitment was that I really wanted to be helping people. And I had this perception that if I was a recruiter, I'd be really helping these people who wanted to transition and helping them to find new jobs and success. And I kind of realized after a little while that recruitment really wasn't about that. It was a sales job, and I was selling people into roles. It was the toughest sales job in the world because it's the only sales job where the product turns around and says, I don't want to be bought by them. And, the client really wasn't the person you were trying to help. The client was the employer. So that got a bit boring. I ended up going back to insolvency because it was where I'd actually had the most interest. And the thing I loved about insolvency was it was really varied. I was working on all sorts of different companies. I remember one was a company that was developing a driving simulator. One was a building company. I worked on the administration of Brash's, the old record store. And when I came back for my second crack, I spent 18 months working out at Ansett, becoming a complete aircraft geek. So that was pretty interesting. But eventually I went on a management development program that Ernst & Young sent me on. And it was there I had what I call my little epiphany. These people standing at the front of the room working with us for 3 days were all geared around helping people do their jobs better, helping them feel better about being at work and being satisfied. And I went, this is so much more powerful. This is the helping people I wanted when I was doing recruitment. So I came about, and this is, I guess, when you talk about crafting a career, I knew that I couldn't go from being an insolvency practitioner to doing that without a bit of strategy. So I worked out, how do I go about that? I did I did my accreditation in Myers-Briggs. I did a grad dip in training and development. And then I thought, halfway through the grad dip, I thought, right, now it's time to go out and look for a role. At that time, I thought, who's going to give me, and, I'm already a manager at this stage, so earning a pretty decent salary. I didn't want to go into an entry level role. So I thought, where am I going to go where I get a job that's at an appropriate level with my experience? And I went, I'm going to go to a law firm and be an L&D manager, because the fact that I'm a lawyer, they'll sort of overlook a little bit that I'm not an expert in L&D. So I did that for a while. The story's going on a bit, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I worked at a couple of law firms. Then I went into a training consultancy, and I was teaching a whole range of diverse skills. And once again, I loved what I was doing, but I felt like I was a bit shallow across all of these things, and I wanted to be a deep expert. I found a role with a consulting company that just taught negotiation and conflict resolution. And that's where I found my area of passion, because once I got into this material, I absolutely loved it. And that brought me all the way back to the beginning when I'd had my stint in the law firm, going, if more people had these skills and could have these better conversations, we'd have such a good way of resolving disputes compared to litigation. So after teaching for a while, I did my mediation accreditation, and that's led to my business now, which is that blend of doing mediation, teaching the skills so that I can put myself out of business.
Wow, what a journey that was! I love the way you joined dots and how you aligned areas as well. That's fantastic.
I think the interesting thing, I'll just add to that, Susan, is up until quite recently, I looked at my career path and I used to think, God, I'm so flaky. I can't make up my mind. I can't stick to anything. And it used to really trouble me that I'd had so many moves. And what's been really clear lately is that that's okay, because once you get to where you want to be, I've had something like 23 different jobs.
Wow.
Now, some of them were contracts and always intended to be short term. I've never been sacked, but 23 jobs, I thought, oh my God, I can't even write a CV on one page. But it now flows into a beautiful story. And I think as long as you're following your passions, that will help happen for people.
Absolutely. And it all makes sense too when you talk through the reasons and rationale behind each move as well. So just in terms of your advice to those that perhaps are listening today that say, look, I'm really not too sure what I want to do. I'm just a bit muddled, or I'm a bit confused. What would your advice be? Just, perhaps Anne-Marie, if you want to kick off.
So first and foremost, I think it's really important to always stay curious. And with what Nicole said, I think, that really came through loud and clear. And it's not knocking back opportunities because you don't think that, it fits within the purview of what you have, thought that you want to do, but stay curious, grab at every opportunity. And, because that experience that you garner is going to really, really hold you in good stead. And I have some students who have actually spoken to me and, been really concerned about the fact that, okay, they're applying for a role in a law firm and they really don't have any experience. Will they, they have other experience. But what I tell them is, even if you worked at McDonald's, that is customer service experience, which is invaluable as a lawyer. So I think it's really, really important to, grab at the opportunities, stay curious, don't be too picky at the beginning. And like Nicole was saying, it doesn't matter. You can move, you can keep moving, because as you move, you're just going to grow. And that would be my advice, actually.
Mm.
Great advice.
The thing that I'd add to that, Anne-Marie, is too, it's absolutely fine to move. You've got to be careful how you do that. And, I think the really interesting thing is about, because obviously it's frustrating to employers when people move. And the one thing that you've got to protect through the whole story is your reputation. And so being really mindful and planning those moves in a way that, doesn't leave the employer to, left in the lurch or anything, and being very conscious about that as the process, and then building a network of people that support you through your career is important to think about as you go through those shifts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, really, really important. Damon?
I was just going to continue on from Nicole. Yeah, you got to worry about the reputation, but at the same time, you have to do what's right for you. You got to follow your passion, and if if there's not much opportunity where you are now, but you want the opportunity to be exposed to different areas, you want to see growth in certain aspects, then sometimes you do have to just take that leap and kind of deal with the consequences, but deal with the reward as well.
And sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
You go, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, and something else I would like to add when it comes to building your network. It's always good to have a mentor, have someone you can work with, identify maybe a professional, not just another lawyer, but build your tribe, as it were, from other professions, because it gives you a different perspective. Because I think some people tend to keep it very narrow and just stick within the law, but I think it's really important to build your tribe outside of the law as well.
Oh, that's a fantastic.
And if I can just go back to what Damon said, because I think what came out from what Damon said was it's about being clear about why you want to move as well. So I think, if you're in a role and it's not giving you what you need and you're unhappy, there's a temptation to just take the first thing that comes along. And then the risk is you end up unhappy again in the next role. So I think there's a process that you want to go through to be really clear about what is it about this role. Is it the people I'm working with? Is it the area of law? Is it the culture of the firm? Is it the location? What is it particularly? What do I need to find in my next role? And until you can find something that at least ticks one of those boxes, it's probably better to just find some way to stay, unless it's making you miserable. I mean, there's nothing like you can't go to work every day where you get to that point where you just can't even get out of bed because it's so terrible. That might be a chance to step out, but then you might even look at doing some contract work or something for a while rather than stepping into another permanent role that's not going to meet your needs.
Yeah, and also while you're working then, I mean, you're not becoming isolated. So the idea is that you are reaching out within the profession, and as Anne-Marie said, outside the profession too, and that you are, establishing connections and having conversations. So you got your finger on the pulse in terms of what's going on as well. Just moving on to the next question. So starting out as a new lawyer and also during a pandemic, is there an ideal time for how long you should spend developing your knowledge and experience before pursuing your interests and kind of branching out? So what do you think about that?
I think it's important to really, build your experience at the beginning. I think before you have been able to really, start doing different things, you probably will start doing one thing that maybe you'll be lucky to get a role in an area you're passionate about. But even if you don't, maybe your passion is family law, but you get a role in a firm with a general practice, that's fine, take it. Because, once you're in it, I think it makes it easier to make those contacts and then keep moving around. And something else I found really interesting was, I don't know whether any of you have heard of Dory Clark, but she actually talks about, thinking about what other skills you have, even when you're when you're working in a firm or, in any organization, try and hone your speaking skills, your things like that where, you'll be tutoring, you may be doing speaking, you can do writing. There are so many different things and opportunities that come up now that, especially with COVID and what has happened, I think if you really, may take the opportunity and do things like that, you just build your CV and build your experience. And that's really, really important.
Finding the time to do that's important. Yeah.
Well, I think even, if as Anne-Marie says, in a market where it can be quite difficult to find exactly what you're looking at the right time, remembering that as a junior lawyer, you're building those foundational skills. So, as Anne-Marie said, if you take a role in a general practice, even though you want to specialise, then focus on, am I developing my skills in legal writing? Am I developing my skills in interviewing clients and building strategies, business development, all of those skills? Because even when you get to your your preferred area, the technical law will change, but all of those skills are the same. And so wherever you are as a junior, you are developing really good practical skills that will take you through into your specialist area.
Damon?
Yeah, and just, as I think everyone said so far, it's just getting in early, getting that exposure, because that's the biggest difference in, especially with the saturated market the way it is, just doing 1 day a week work experience at, multiple different firms or, one firm. Something as simple as that can actually, put you above someone who's spending their whole time just studying and just focusing on getting the grades and not getting any experience, because then you are building those skills as Nicole just discussed.
Yeah.
And also, I think if you are working even in a law firm, it always helps to, try and get some work in community legal centers. Those can also be that can also be very helpful.
Okay, great advice. I'm just going to move on now slightly to a little bit of a different topic about when you made the decision, all three of you, to run your own businesses. And Damon, it's a little bit different for you, but even just establishing the podcast, how did you go about setting up that business and managing kind of the operational aspects as well? So kind of going from an employee to running your own show. Tell us a little bit about how you manage that transition.
So that's interesting, actually, because talking of what I did in Australia after having requalified, I did work in a law firm for 6 months, but I didn't know when to get out and start my own practice, because I'm one of those who just wants to work on my own. I just got my practicing certificate and started just like that. I didn't think of, how I was even going to get clients, and I just got a practicing certificate, got started, and just started networking, talking to people, and walk down the street and, talk to all the real estate agents and, send me work, this is what I'm doing. And it's all about just making that, having the conversation and putting yourself out there. And I think right throughout, that's what I have done. I've just followed my passion and made sure that I've just gone out there and made the contacts. And I think, because coming to Australia as an immigrant, it's not as if I had any contacts. I had no contacts in the legal profession, nothing. And I've just built it from scratch. And I think something I'm really, really proud of is I met our former Chief Justice of the Family Court, Diana Bryant, Honorable Diana Bryant. I met her at a meeting once, and I actually just, I thought, I want to talk to you because I'm in family law. And I went out there and I told her what I do, and she had never heard of me. And she's like, yeah, that's really interesting. And I had the conversation with her. And then she was going to be at a conference, at the AFCC conference in Sydney. And I actually reached out to her on LinkedIn, and I said, I'd really like to meet you. I heard you're going to be there. And I'm particularly interested in this parenting coordination that you're interested in. She said, yeah, come and meet me. And I met her, and I said to her, I said, look, I'm thinking of putting an application in for the Churchill Fellowship. Will you be one? Will you recommend it? And she said, yes, I will. And I was so thrilled, because if I had not gone out there and made the contact and had been diffident, it would have never happened. But it turned out to be such an incredible mentor to me. But it's just because I've just gone out there and, made the effort. So just do that, go out there, ask questions, stay curious, because you don't know where it will take you.
Yeah, and I remember, Anne-Marie, you actually mentioned that you consider yourself to be an introvert, which I was just shocked to hear. But
yes, I am actually. I am an introvert, because I'm quite happy to stay at home, and so lockdown suits me fine. But when it comes to work, I actually go out there and I will put myself out there and network. And it's all about what what you can contribute as well. It's not just what you can get, but what you can give. So that exchange of ideas, and people really appreciate that, I think.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Nicole.
Well, firstly, I wish I'd grown up with half of Anne-Marie's confidence, because it's taken me a long time to get there. But I think it is so important.
Yeah.
My journey into setting up my own business was quite different. So I'd been working, and obviously it's not a legal practice, but I'd been working for a training consultancy for a while. And the impetus for me to set up on my own was that I didn't want to be just delivering training to people. It was teaching the same thing over and over again, but not actually putting it into practice. Although, that being said, you put negotiation into practice all the time, and I was negotiating with potential clients, but I wasn't doing it the way that I wanted. So I spoke with my employer at the time about whether we could go back. They'd previously done consulting work as well as the training, but they weren't interested in doing that. So I thought the only way I'm going to be able to do it is to do it by myself. I was in a lucky position that I could afford to go into it and have a fairly slow start to the business. I wasn't going to starve if I did that, because I had, a husband who was working and providing enough for us to live off. But I did want to make sure that I had a couple of clients on board before I came out on my own. So I had a few conversations with people and said, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And I had sort of a guarantee that there'd be a certain amount of income coming through in my first year. The other thing for me was, going into mediation, it's actually a really tough industry to break into, particularly the commercial space. Most of the work in the mediation side is referred by lawyers. They've all got a list of mediators that they already use and know and love and continue to use. So I knew it was going to be quite a lengthy process to be able to build up that side of the practice. And so from that side, it was a very conscious decision to get onto a few panels, such as the Victorian Small Business Commission, where I would be getting mediation experience through the panel, but also getting exposure to lawyers who, a number of the lawyers that I've mediated for on that panel have become referrers of private work as well. So quite a different journey to Anne-Marie's, but as I've gone through, I think, that idea about coming into your confidence and having that confidence to reach out to people is making a real difference. And I'm getting much better at that. It's still a work in progress, but definitely learning to feel more comfortable with asking for help and asking for guidance.
It's wonderful. Damon, what about you?
Yeah, look, I definitely think that's something that takes practice, just messaging people out of the blue or reaching out. It's very scary, especially for junior lawyers. And I guess for me, that's the main reason I started the podcast is I'm from a small town up north, so there wasn't any network that I could really reach out to. And so I just thought with the way it was going, I think it was around the COVID time actually, I thought there's got to be a way I can reach out online or some way to connect and make those connections. So I started the Young Lawyer podcast just to interview people, find out a bit about their stories and just get advice from them. Because obviously I'm learning as well, but then obviously I can pass that advice on to new young lawyers that were coming through or PLT students or law grads. And so from there, it's just, like everyone else has said, it's just, reaching out. That's just the biggest thing, whether it's just flicking someone a message on LinkedIn, grabbing a coffee, depending on obviously the lockdown and restrictions, but even just, being involved. So the thing I've noticed from interviewing these people is that, you can be on LinkedIn, but if you're just sitting there liking away, doing this and that, no one's going to pay attention to. You need to be active. You need to be commenting, sharing articles, discussing, actively participating. So as I think Anne-Marie said, it's that give and take. To actually get yourself noticed. And then from there, it just kind of trickles. Once you start doing it once, it just keeps happening and you just get on a roll very quickly. So for me, I'm pretty fortunate that it's given me the opportunity to participate in a number of things, including this webinar, and just getting to meet great people, great lawyers, even people who no longer want to practice, but have previously done their law degree and been lawyers and then transitioned to something else where they've actually followed their passion. So for me, it's been great getting to learn and obviously, hopefully share it all with everyone else.
That's great. Just a couple of things I wanted to talk about, because I am conscious that we've got lots of questions. I was going to ask about the flexibility question. So flexibility is a big part of the equation for most individuals. So how do you find flexible work arrangements for those with children or those who are wanting to combine other interests with their work? So how did you perhaps go about, particularly like Nicole and Anne-Marie, when you were trying to find that flexibility so you were able to maintain, you know, your family commitments and other things as well? So what advice would you have for people out there that are trying to find meaningful, perhaps part-time work?
So I think that changes for everyone, because, you know, with family dynamics, everyone's got different needs and wants and, you know, your different sort of helps. So for me, actually, I had a baby when she was just 1.5 and my boys were probably 10 and 6. So I had to work around them because my husband was working full time. So I had to sort of, you know, manage the school runs and work. And so for me, I ended up doing a lot of work, I think, in the evenings, and I used to, that kind of work quite well for me. Something else that's really important is you really need to ask for help. I think don't try and do everything yourself, because sometimes that, you know, that is just too much. And I used to, even if it's going to cost you a little bit, you kind of got to weigh it up and ask for help, because, you know, law can be quite stressful and it takes a lot of you know, effort and reading and all of that. So make sure that you sort of do whatever fits your schedule in your family, but set boundaries, set very clear boundaries, because if you don't, then you know, even when you're working part-time, you tell your employers, talk to them about the issues you're having, because there is quite a, you know, awareness now around well-being and all of that, and they'll take it on board. When I started 18 years ago, people weren't talking about things like that, but now I think, you know, there's far more awareness. So talk about the flexibility and what works for you, and I'm sure if you have the conversation, you'd get what you want.
Nicole?
Yeah, so once again, I mean, I've got 3 children. The eldest is 14 and the others are 12. And by the time they've got to high school, flexibility becomes much easier to manage. In the early days when I had my first, I was working as a learning and development manager rather than a lawyer, and I didn't work full time once I went back from maternity leave. I think the best part of my flexibility was actually when we moved to Dubai and we were able to afford a full-time housekeeper, because that was the easiest period of my entire career, was when we had that full-time help. But I think what Anne-Marie said is important. I mean, it's about working out what you need as a family. You know, for me, the work was always really important, and work's a big part of my identity. So I didn't enjoy the times where I had extended breaks with no work. I needed to be back and doing it. So it was really important for me then to figure out how to make that happen. I worked with employers on a part-time basis most of the time up until I set up my own business. And one of the things that I found when I went out on my own was that in some ways I had more flexibility, but in other ways I had less. You know, there was no one else to pass things to. When a client wanted something and they needed it done, there was no one else to hand it to. So I'm a bit more at the mercy of the client. I know when I was very busy doing PLT courses, and I actually had courses that I was managing, I spent a couple of years where I was often just working till midnight to get that done, because I was running the business during the day. And PLT was one of the things that I did to give me some income in the early days of my business. So it was the core of my funding, but it wasn't the core of my business, but it took up time. So, you know, I think it's one of those things where I knew that for a short period of time, I was going to have that challenging lifestyle and put the hours in. if you ask my kids, was it a good time? I think they'd be okay with it. I mean, we had au pairs for a number of years, which comes with its own challenges. Having, you know, a foreigner who's young and inexperienced living in the home. Some were better than others. I wonder I could write a book on some of the stories. But now, you know, as I said, the kids are older. They don't need so much day-to-day support. And the fact that I've got my own business and I can just block days out of my diary and work around those is probably one of the things that would keep me from going back into employment, because it's lonely. And I'd love to work in a larger team and have colleagues, but I would not give up that flexibility at the moment.
Fantastic. And Damon, what about you? How?
I'm just taking advice from Anne-Marie and Nicole in preparation for next year.
Yes.
But I guess I can touch on the work-life balance. It really comes down to what you're wanting to achieve, I guess. You can do your 9 to 5, clock off and go home. You know, you probably won't do much more study. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, you just want to do 9 to 5. You're not really worried about going the extra mile or doing the extra bit of study or anything like that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's really just what you want to achieve. For me, I'm a sucker for punishment, so continuing to study despite, you know, all the time spent at uni. But, you know, it's just you schedule it. If you schedule it really well, then you can kind of nail it down. I find myself, I'm probably the worst procrastinator. So I'll leave everything to last minute, which, you know, you're told not to many times. But yeah, you know, I'm out of here probably 5:30, 6 o'clock most nights, home for maybe studying an hour. So until the baby's born next year, I feel like I've still got a decent work-life balance, but that might change.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for that, Damon. I was just going to finish off with just a very last quick question. So if we can just go around the drawbacks, you probably already touched on it then, the drawbacks of a portfolio career and just kind of looking after your health and well-being. Just any comments on that, how you do that?
Always, I think I put a lot of emphasis on self-care. So when I talk self-care, that's the exercise, I mean, I do a lot of meditation, you know, just alone time and me time. I think that really helps to rejuvenate, and it is the first thing that you will sort of fall off the schedule, but I try and make sure that I don't let that happen, because I have let it happen. And when I did run my law firm, I actually burnt out, and which is why I decided I wanted to change career paths. So having been there, done that, I have the awareness now and just make time for myself. And I think it makes you a better lawyer. And always remember, you're a person first and a lawyer second. Don't ever forget that. And whatever you do, you can't please everyone. So, you know, just keep that in mind and, you know, just do the best you can.
That's great advice. And Damon?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. I often find myself waking up doing probably 20 minutes, half an hour of just breathing work in the morning just to try and prepare myself for the day. And then I'll try and do some at night just to try and give myself that break from everything that I've dealt with during the day. So that way I can go to bed. I don't have to think about it, despite most of us lawyers, we probably tend to overthink and continue to think late into the night about issues during the day. It's about giving you that gap between that work, making that clear separation, go, all right, I'm home now, I'm not going to deal with that. Or it's probably a bit harder for Nicole and Anne because obviously they've got the business to run from home. But for myself, as soon as I get home, I'm, you know, trying to not look at my emails or anything like that. It's just put away. It's, you know, family time kind of thing.
That's fantastic to be so disciplined. I'm now going to just go over to the questions, and I'm just kind of having a look at them as well. And I noticed that some of them have actually been probably answered. So if I do miss you, apologies, but I'll just quickly have a look here. So there was a question around advice for mature age students who have been mums and out of the workforce and have gone back to study. They don't have the time to go from job to job. Any comments on that? So, yeah.
Nicole, you want to take that? Because
Look, I think there's a couple of things. I guess the thing that springs to me is, what is it about having multiple jobs that is different for a mum returning to the workplace than somebody else who is in a job trying to move? And I guess there is a challenge because it takes time to find new jobs, so you don't want to have to do that. But I think it's the same thing. You've got to find the right fit. So, you know, whether it's about being more careful up front to find the culture of the firm and the organisation that you want to be with, or whether it's just, you know, actually going, well, I might have to move, but how do I make that as effective as possible for the family? I think, you know, the fact that you're a mum, you know, there are some places it might be harder if you're looking for part-time. You know, there's just not as many part-time opportunities, but there are also some great support groups for women lawyers and a lot of women-led firms that are more than happy to look at those flexible options, as well as firms that aren't women-led as well. So I think people are becoming more flexible.
Great.
I think that's, particularly important with the COVID. A lot of the general 9 to 5 is changing to be able to work from home, to be able to work outside of normal hours too. So there's definitely opportunity growing in that aspect.
Another question around prospects for someone who is entering law at a mature age, so late 40s going into their 50s, and also people with disabilities. So kind of any thoughts about that? So later lawyers.
So there again, I think it would be, you know, figuring out what sort of flexibility you're going to need. And I think talking to your employers about that, being upfront about what exactly your needs are and what you're going to, you know, what you'll expect. And I think, you know, having that conversation, because a lot sometimes is left unsaid, and we sort of think that, you know, people are going to understand, but we really need to spell it out. And I think if you do that, you'll be able to, you know, figure out what it is that you need and talk to the employers about that.
But I think the other thing too with those people is, look, if you're going into one of the top tier firms, it may be more challenging to get a role. But, you know, once again, there's certainly mature age people coming in as graduates, and I've had them as PLT students at some of the top tier firms. But the other thing is that your life experience and your prior experience may be really well received by boutique practices or smaller firms. And that gives you the opportunity potentially to come in on a higher salary or a higher level, because you're bringing commercial skills or subject matter expertise to the table that other graduates can't bring. So you've got to look at what is your differentiator and how do you sell that to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. Just there's a question here for Anne-Marie about matters related to property conveyancing and wills from home itself. Are those areas more suited to working online and from home? What were the challenges you faced in building your clientele?
So when I started, it was all paper-based transactions. Now things have moved, you know, so it's all online now and picks up. But having said that, when I did start my practice, I sort of kind of forged ahead and ran an online practice. As it were, I call it an online practice, and built my own sort of, you know, little tech tools and things like that. So I think it's not difficult to build a clientele in conveyancing and wills and estates, because, you know, everyone needs will, and more often than not, everyone's buying a property. So like I said, I started off by just talking to all the real estate agents, just making, you know, having conversations, joining the, you know, whatever little committees or neighborhood groups, you know, just getting your name out there in the area in which you're working. And then, you know, if you do a good job, people just keep recommending you, you know. And now with social media, there's so much you can do, you know, with Facebook advertising and things like that.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. There's a question here about networking during COVID, and how would you recommend that you do that?
definitely a challenge. Look, it has been, and I rely on networking for growing my business as much as anything. So I've really been looking at this idea, and, you know, there's still certain groups that exist. I think the thing about networking in COVID is you might go to a presentation or you might go to an event online. So for example, I go to things like BNI, which is a networking group, or I'll turn up at seminars. You don't get that chance to mingle and meet new people the way that you do face to face, but you can always pick a name. And if there's names that are familiar, it's a good reason then to reach out to that person, perhaps via LinkedIn or something, connect with them and say, hey, I saw you at the such and such a thing, would love to connect. And so just, you know, while you can't do everything that you could do face to face, do what you can. And just those connections, you know, you're always looking for something you've got in common with someone when you're networking. And so the fact that you're in an event together is something in common that you can use to try and spark a relationship.
And something else, I think, you know, there are advantages of COVID and there are disadvantages. And I think with COVID, I have found that I've been doing a lot on social media, and I've actually got clients from all over the world as a result, you know, for my coaching. I mean, I had a client that reached out to me the other day from Dubai. And I said, you know, how do you find me? And like through Instagram, because I get on Instagram and do all these little, you know, short videos on, you know, managing conflict and what you can do. And, you know, just people are getting that sort of information, and, you know, they reach out to you, and it's a point of difference because not everyone is doing it. And as lawyers, I think it's, you know, we are a little more diffident. We're obviously very risk averse, but it's, you know, just create your niche, talk about what it is that you do, you know, because that's to do with your personal branding, because a lot of people are not doing it, you know, so that point of differentiation, I think, is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're like really active as well on LinkedIn, and Marie. I mean, you all are actually, all three of you. And I think kind of that's really important. And Damon, you mentioned that before, not just kind of liking things, but more being really active and sharing, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing I've learned since doing the podcast is that although they're pretty scary, directors are actually, or, you know, business owners are actually pretty warm. And I think it's just must be a lawyer thing. We can't say no to a beer or a coffee. So we're always happy to network when, you know, restrictions are lifted.
I know it's so, and yet people always say, oh, is it appropriate to be kind of reaching out to people for a conversation? So there is a bit of a perception there that it's not.
And also, I think, you know, let your personality shine through, and you can do that. You know, if you are, you know, someone who's very creative with your posts, you know, make your posts more creative, because it stands out. It's that, you know, you really need to do something that really differentiates you, because that will show, you know, what it is that you're good at. And I think that really holds you in good stead.
That's true. In any information regarding becoming a licensed negotiator?
I did see that one sitting there in the questions, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if they're referring to being an accredited mediator or if there's a different qualification. I'm not a licensed negotiator. I am an accredited mediator. And to be quite honest, it's one of the things that I've done because it's there, but no one's ever asked me if I'm accredited before asking me to do a mediation. But it's all part of the credentials that you get for somebody. So, you know, while you're building a profile, those credentials can be really important. And after you've got there, you know, most of my work doesn't come from cold calls. It comes from referrals. And so the credentials themselves are a lot less important than the fact that I've done good work for somebody in the past.
Thanks very much, Nicole. Question here about elective subjects. Does it matter which ones you choose at the college? Seeing that as a young lawyer, you are better off starting with any opportunity that comes your way and not limiting yourself to a particular branch of the law. So, yeah, what would you suggest about choosing electives?
I think if you're learning something, you know, it's always good to learn something that you don't know too much about. So maybe if you haven't done a subject in university and you have the opportunity of doing it in your PLT, I think, grab the opportunity. On the other hand, I have some students who work in a particular area and, you're getting more knowledge in that area. So I think it's a matter of personal preference.
I think that the only thing I'd add to that is, if you're not going to plan on practicing, if you never want to do a will or you never want to do crim, obviously don't do those. But I do think that choosing admin law as a foundational subject is probably something that's beneficial to most lawyers, because for me, that's an area of law that's not particularly well understood. It's also an area of law that does play a part in a lot of different things. And I think it's got really broad exposure, and it's very different doing admin law and PLT to what you learn as part of your university study. So I think for me, that's a really practical one that I'd say almost should be a compulsory.
Damon, any thoughts?
I think they've covered it pretty well. It's all really, personal perspective on what you're wanting to achieve, what you have an interest in.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. We just finished off a few last questions. How do you take on extra experience of work with community legal centres if you work a full-time 9-to-5 job?
So with the community legal centers, I think there's a lot of flexibility. So even if you can, work maybe twice a month or something like that, it's not that you have to do. Yeah, it is generally at night. It is generally at night. Sorry if I didn't make myself very clear, but that's generally at night that they're looking, because that's when their calls come through. Because I used to work at the St. Kilda Legal Aid Center, and I found it such a great experience. You come across matters that you probably won't even come across in practice, and it really gives you some really good exposure. So if you can do it even once or twice a month, I would encourage it.
Yeah. Okay. Regarding changing jobs, any tips for telling employers you are leaving or you have another opportunity, just so that you can maintain relationships and your reputation? I've experienced employers being annoyed at my leaving.
And I think the thing for me would be to recognise that they may well be annoyed regardless of how good your reason is, because it's a disruption to their business, it's a cost to their business, and they may feel like they've invested a lot in your development and training. So I would recognise that it's reasonable for them to have those feelings and not necessarily take it personally, but I would just be as polite and open as you can about why. If you've got, reasons that are things that they can't do, I'd explain those. And, if they're upset at the time you tell them, I'd just give them a bit of space. They may come around and get over it.
Yes, you can't please everyone.
No.
Absolutely. There's a question here that I thought I might just read out. It's about recommending doing clerkships at a commercial law firm if you're not sure that's what you want to do. Is that one of the best opportunities you can have as a junior lawyer? So I'm probably not going to answer this question. I'm a bit biased, but what do you all think about clerkships? They're not the be all end all.
They're not the be all and end all. So, but if I read that question as, if you're not sure you want to be a commercial lawyer, is it worth doing a clerkship? And I'd say absolutely. How else are you going to know what you're saying no to? So it's certainly not the end of your career if you don't get a clerkship, but if you're not sure, if you're thinking, I don't know if I want to go into family or government or in-house or into a commercial firm, absolutely give it that go. It's 4 weeks of your life. You'll get to have a sense of it, and then I say it's about not having regrets later, going, oh gosh, I should have done that clerkship, maybe I should have done this. Give it a go. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, and if you miss out on them because they are so competitive, there's lots of other ways of getting experience as well. Yeah. Have we got time for just 2 more questions and then we'll finish up? It's just on 2 o'clock now. There's a question here about Anne-Marie about when she came to Australia. Did you apply for an assessment of your Sri Lankan qualifications and proceed straight to do PLT before qualifying as an Australian lawyer?
Yes, so I did have to check on that, and I actually had to do 5 subjects, but I did that online while in Sri Lanka. So this is going back to 2001 or 2002, and Deakin was the only college that was allowing online. So I did, I think, 5 subjects like property, constitutional, admin, and 2 other subjects. I can't even remember it. So when I came here, I was ready to do my PLT.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And we'll just take this last one. So this individual started their law career in the middle of COVID as an in-house legal for an Australian stock exchange company providing financial services. They feel that it doesn't align with their interests and the experience scope of work's limited. They've got no exposure to any other area of law and unsure about how to try a different area at their junior level. Want to make themselves attractive in future to prospective employers, and working on, from Nicole, was having multiple jobs on your CV detrimental?
So look, I think the first thing I'd say, and I think we sort of talked about this earlier, I think if you're in the job and you're not enjoying it, just still focus on what are the things that you're doing and what are all the benefits you can get from it while you're in it. At the same time, start looking around at what else might be there. Maybe go and talk to a recruiter as well. Not that you have to go through them, but they are a wealth of resources and information. In terms of, did it impact on my ability? Well, I think because there was a story for each change, it didn't really, I don't think it's ever actually impacted on me. You know, I was still able to get interviews when I was looking for new jobs. And, you know, as I said, it may be that you need to put a bit of explanation around why you've moved, or put a reason for leaving, wanted to change fields. But I don't think it's actually been a real problem. I thought it was at the time and I was sensitive to it, but in reality, I actually don't think it was.
Okay, thank you for that. I've noticed that there's a whole lot of questions as well, and comments in chat. So I do apologise if I have not been able to get back to everyone, but the questions were coming in quick and fast. So I think it's a good time now to finish up. So thank you very much, Anne-Marie, Nicole and Damon, for just sharing your insights and your perspectives. It has been really great talking with you. And I feel like we could just go on forever. We probably just touched the tip of the iceberg. But I really, really thank you very much for finding time with your busy, hectic portfolio career schedules. So thank you very much. And I hope you've all enjoyed this session. And just very quickly, getting lots of lovely thank yous, which is fantastic.
And Susan, I'm really happy if people want to reach out and connect on LinkedIn. Always happy for people to do that as well. And, you know, if you want to email a question through or something,
yes,
happy to
absolutely.
answer.
Everyone, did you just take note of that?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Generously saying link in. So go for that. Yeah, we've been getting like heaps of thank yous, so that is just so nice to see. And I was just going to comment, I'm running a session. The next one is in November, and that's going to be about the power of having a mentor and how to go about finding a mentor. And we'll actually speak to some mentors and mentees. So that one will be coming up in early November, and that'll be advertised on the events page of the College of Law. So thank you very much. And it's been, really wonderful. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.